You're running a $1.3 million firm with no role in it whatsoever, with $400,000 of cash flow a year. You have built what so many thousands of accountants out there are trying to build. You've created a passive business.
There's a lot of fear associated with that. And I had to become somebody else. I had to become Scotty and become OKR to be okay with who I was, to be comfortable with who I was.
Previously on Shoperations at Accounting High.
I was never Scotty growing up. That was never in my aliases. I was always Scott. You call me Scotty, it's like a little kid. I didn't want to be a little kid. I was grown up. I knew everything. I was like, even though I was the youngest one in the franchise, I wanted everybody to respect me. You didn't want to call me Scotty then because I would have gotten upset.
Introducing the star of our show,
Scott Scarano, EA.
We're gonna have a problem here.
So where did Scotty come in?
That's the podcast era. That's after the firm. That's post-firm era too. Not post-COVID, but post-firm. That's like rapper era.
Okay.
This is still like growing and building the firm. We're growing with zero. We're growing. We've got inbound leads like crazy. We at least were getting, at some weeks, we were getting 10, 20 good leads from zero, from Gusto's directory, from the other directories that we're in. So we never had a problem with client acquisition. That's why we never really found a niche either. Our niche was the verticals that we were in, which was the software that we were using. Our software was our niche because those clients were using that software. So it was the clients that were already forward thinking for their era too in their businesses because they were using. And I always saw it as that. Like if they found zero, they must be smart enough to work with us too. And that was our psychographic. That was our clients that we wanted to work with because a lot of times they didn't want to work with Intuit. That's why they found zero. So we already had this like in with them. Oh, you guys are a zero firm. We like you.
You had that shared rebel spirit.
Found that a lot. That was an accidental psychographic that we stumbled upon. But you start attracting people that are like you too. So we had good stuff on our website. When somebody goes on your website, they're going to go straight to the team page. So I knew we had to invest in our team page. So I hired a photographer. We've done this a couple different times where we did like a whole photo shoot. You know, you hover over their page and you see something fun about them. They're doing something different. They have a serious picture and you hover over and then it changes. And I told everybody, bring your hobbies. Dress up as somebody that you really are. It's you, truly you. And everybody did something. At that point, ironically, I showed up with a suit. And so I had like a regular shirt and a suit. And that was like the only difference. But I had characters and stuff. I still have this like crazy personality. We had a lot of comic book clients that owned comic book stores. That was a niche I wanted to get into too. The biggest comic book store in North Carolina, that was our client. He runs the whole convention. My office was covered with the Funko Pop figures, all different kinds of cartoony, comic booky things. That was me. So you still had this like personality that I brought in with everything else I was doing. And so we attracted people that had a fun personality. I didn't look like an accountant. People would say to me, you're not like an accountant. So that's what I just kept getting from the people that were attracted to us as they wanted to work with us. These were the people that were finding us through Google or through the software. They were looking at our team like, you guys are fun. You're not like the other accountants that we looked at. So we leaned into that and we did more of that, or we did more fun things because nobody else was doing it. I always wanted to do the things that nobody else was doing.
But I mean, that also plays into, that's your personality. And I would think from the sounds of it, that's generally your team's personality too.
We have interesting hiring techniques too at the firm. We haven't done any hiring in a long time, but when we didn't do video calls at the time. This started in like 2015, 16. When I took over the firm, I would have people call and leave a voicemail and answer 3 questions. And these 3 questions had nothing to do with accounting. One was, how would you describe the color yellow to a blind person? Another one was Apple or Android and why? The last one was, do you consider yourself lucky and why? So this way, if somebody didn't leave the voicemail, we never even looked at their resume. So we got to filter through all that. We would get a ton of resumes every time we were hiring. And then we would listen to the way people answered those questions. And the people that are still with me today are the ones that took some serious thought into how to answer those questions. That's the type of person I was looking for to interface with a client. Somebody that could think on their feet, or that would take a client's questions seriously, or that would think outside the box. And so that's how I built my team, was by doing things a little bit differently and attracting the people that were odd like me.
That's fascinating. Because, like, as I think today, I think I'd absolutely love that. But, like, coming out of college, I was a traditionalist. I would have seen that and been like, these guys are a bunch of, like, wackos.
Loonies.
Like, I can't work here. I'm still wearing my shirt and tie every day. I got in trouble for wearing a short sleeve shirt my first public accounting job.
Look, I got fired for having my headphones on. This was the kind of thing that it was like, it became my rebel yell. I wanted to rebel against all these other firms because I was different and I wasn't accepted.
I view Summit CPA as like one of the first ones who kind of embraced that kind of the quirkiness. I mean, they did their cartoons. Jody wore his Hawaiian shirts.
I loved it.
Were you doing this before they became
Before I
success
knew who
story?
they even were. Before I knew who they even were. When I finally found Summit was through Ron Baker. So Ron Baker was a big influence in my firm. I found him through some content that Intuit put out, and I found Ron Baker and I started reading his books, and that's what changed how we priced. And he did a webinar at one point and he mentioned Jody Grunden from Summit. And this was my podcast era. And so I just looked up Jody, and I have a podcast. So I just reached out to him and asked if he wanted to be on it. And he did. And that was our second most listened to episode to this day. Go check out the Model Cloud accounting firm. I just recently had Jody's partner on.
You were doing the quirkiness before it was proven that it could work.
I was doing things that were different, that if they worked, I kept doing them. So we found out that stuff worked by accident, in that people were telling me I was different, not just accepting of it, but leaning into it. You're different, or you're doing this different. And that's also because I didn't really have a boss. The owner of the firm was never there. So I had nobody telling me what I could or couldn't do. And the only people that were telling me what I could or couldn't do was my team. And I didn't listen to my team. What? You telling me I can't do this? Of course I'm going to do it. Still, that happens today too. So
Okay. So when you roll into a team meeting now, there's like is there a sense of fear, like, oh no, what is he going to implement now?
Well, let's wait till we get there,
Okay.
because we haven't got to the point where I drove them away or I drove myself out. So that's more of the post-COVID world,
Okay.
where they can look at me and roll their eyes, and I will laugh too, rather than it being a point of contention.
Okay, so let's start with your EOS journey. So you've got the implementer that's working with you. Walk through that process and how it got you to the point you are today.
Yeah, that was hard. The first onset of EOS was very hard for us to start looking and thinking about this stuff differently, because we were so tunneled in on how we ran our firm that if you told us we had to set up an accountability chart and start splitting departments out, we didn't understand how all that stuff worked. And it took us probably a year to really fully comprehend that. And I know that might seem like a long time to some people, but when you're telling us you can't have a tax department and accounting department, you just need to have a production department, we're like, no, tax and accounting needs to be separate. Like we looked at all of these things as a firm would. It was pretty hard for me to envision how I would get out of some of these seats that I was sitting in too. We just were learning, how businesses are supposed to be run and how you have a CEO at a firm. You don't have somebody that just has a book of business. You have somebody that runs the business, that works on the business, not in the business. I was learning some of those things before EOS, but I still didn't quite fully understand what it meant. I still thought if I was working on the business, that just means I'm doing the marketing and I'm doing the other stuff. I'm not just doing the client work. I didn't realize that I could even get out of the sales and the marketing too. I thought that was still working on the business. You're shaping it and molding it how you went. But as I realized through EOS that I could potentially get myself out of all those seats. So that became the dream. Probably like 2019, 2018, I was like, I just want to be the visionary of this firm. That's what I want to do. That was part of the journey. It was still just hard for me to get out of the way.
So how long did it take you from the point that you saw the EOS light to actually get it fully implemented, and kind of how did you involve your employees in that process?
Yeah. So I involved them all on the management team, but it still relied on me to make decisions. It was not until 2020 when I was stuck in Mexico. It was sort of intentionally, like we stayed in Mexico because the team had things under control, but I really enabled them to make decisions while I was there. And they decided to get out of the office and work from home. They weren't going to go, even though we were technically, quote unquote, like necessary services, whatever they called it. Essential business?
Yeah, essential.
Yeah, we were
essential
business.
workers because we were in payroll.
Yeah. So we were essential workers, although my team didn't see it that way. And I didn't want to argue with them. I wasn't even in the States at the time. Like our extended trip, which was supposed to be a few weeks, turned into a few months. So I let them run with it. Everybody was working. We had the ability to do that. Remember, I said they worked from home maybe 2 to 3 days a week if I let them. Now they were working from home every day. They didn't go back to the office. I come back from Mexico and I don't have anybody in the office. I go into the office myself because that's where I thought I needed to work and get work done. And there was nobody in there. So eventually I started to see like they were running things. They were doing everything that I was doing while I was in the office now because it was hard for me to like insert myself in. I wasn't like in their email boxes or anything. I was just doing sales at that point. I stopped reviewing. I stopped everything else that I was doing in the firm, got myself out of those roles fully, and I was just doing sales at that point in 2020. We were not growing as rapidly, and we hired 2 new people too. So this was different. I come back and I'm seeing all this potential, all this hope for the future. So we hired 2 new fully remote employees. I didn't mention we started doing stuff in the Philippines between that 2017 and 2020. So at that point, we did start hiring a couple people in the Philippines, but it was really like 2 half employees. We didn't fully offsource everything to them. We still had a lot of people. There was 12 people in the U.S. and 2 in the Philippines at one point. And we had just hired 2 people, 1 in Tennessee, 1 in Louisiana. And we had people here. We did not have an office. And we had people in the Philippines. We were fully everywhere. And I'm looking at the P&L, and we lost money. In 2020, we had a net loss on the P&L.
Did that include your salary?
Yeah, it included my salary. Even if you take mine out, it wasn't that much of a profit. Like it was.
Because yeah, that sounded like a lot of FTEs for 1.2 million at that point.
Yeah, I feel like I was probably delusional about the growth that we had in the past, and I felt like I could replicate that. If all I was doing was sales and that's all I had to do, okay, I could handle this. And man, we brought in a ton of new business. I closed so many deals, but they couldn't handle it. We backed up. They couldn't finish all the onboarding. So for all the people that we hired, they were still trying to train everybody into how we did everything. And then we're loading them up with new clients, and then we're losing the clients because they can't handle all of the work that I was giving them. It was like bottleneck. So I'm trying to take in all the business that we needed to stay profitable. We hit a decision point where, okay, now what? Now I think we have to, this was 2021. Now we have to get rid of people or something. And so we had 1 employee that was the front desk of the office. That's where she sat. That was her role, was to greet people when they walked in. She was like the admin that was doing other stuff. And we're trying to find a place for her. And we realized she's not necessary anymore. We had another employee that was sort of like, he was somebody that we probably should have got rid of. And in EOS, you learn right butts in the right seats, but also if it's not the right person, quick to fire, slow to hire, quick to fire. And I never let anybody go up until that point. People were just seeing themselves to the door. We'd lose people all the time, but as any firm does, you overwork somebody or whatever, they find another job or they find a better opportunity. You lose people for whatever reason. This time, we had to let 2 people go. And this was the turning point for me, was when my management team said they would handle it. And they took it so hard. One of them was throwing up. He was so stressed out about having to do this. And these are like friends of ours too. Like I consider everybody that worked with us a friend, but we're losing money. We can't handle it. And we just hired 2 new people and they were good. So we had to let 2 of our people go. That was an extremely huge turning point for us because I really did trust them. That was when when I saw how they had to handle this and how they did handle it, and they met with the people on their own and they let them go, that's when I realized I really can ease up off the gas. Really, this is my job, is just sales at that point. And, I said we had a net loss in 2020. 2021 profit was 450. I calculated all of it after my discretionary, and it was like close to 600 and everything. This 2021. So we go from a year of a loss to like most profitable we've ever been, and we're still very profitable. Let's just say 2021 had some other stuff too. There was some
I was going to say, how much of that was the one-off ERC PPP?
Right. And then we can get to closer to today's days. But the 2021 was the real turning point year of everything changing, of me fully all in on the podcast and doing my other stuff. Now really in this visionary seat.
Yeah. So you went from wondering what the hell you needed to do to fix a CPA firm that was losing money in 1 year to the next year making $650,000. One, I mean, how did you handle that swing? And two, what did you need to do, well, you and your team do? Because letting two people go, even if they're highly compensated, that gets you $150,000, $200,000 of reduced expenses at most. You still swung that $450,000.
Yeah, it's a big swing. So, and I always take big swings. So whenever I do something, I'm doing it all across the board, right? We're already pretty good about other expenses besides payroll. But by getting rid of those people, we knew how much capacity we still had. And then by leaning in to the Philippines employees more too, and hiring more of them and having them do more, we knew our team here could do less than they were doing too. So we started taking stuff off of their plates and moving it to the Philippines. And now we haven't hired anybody in the U.S. since. Well, we have 5 people in the Philippines now. I would say the reduced cost of labor was a major factor in this. The no office, but along with no rent, you also have no more office expenses too. So all of the other things associated with having an office are now gone. It was very lean, and I was extremely, extremely focused on our profitability at that time too. So everything I did, and then all of a sudden this windfall of ERC stuff starts coming in 2021, 2022-ish, those years. Everything's just like hit, like when things line up or you win a bunch of money in the casino, that's kind of how it felt. It also didn't feel real too. It was like, I have been nervous about that 2020 year ever since it happened. So for 4 years, I'm still concerned. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, what if we're not profitable again? What if this happens again? So that scarred me. And I'm still suffering from that psychologically. To see that we were at a loss, I thought also it was because I wasn't doing any work. So do I need to go back and do the work again too? Like, do I need to go back and do this? Because that was still early in the stages of me not doing much when it comes to production. I still hadn't gotten out of sales. I didn't get out of sales till 2022. It was a pretty big swing, but it all felt like it was intentional. So I still didn't like it. I knew the fluke was all of the government stuff, like the ERC. Mm-hmm. We're making good money off of that.
That's what I joke. All my boats should be named ERC. But so did that give you? Because at that point you had a pretty big cushion of reserves. Did that give you more confidence to be able to try some new things, or was it more of a confidence level that you could completely step away from the firm because your management team handled everything in that huge year? So like if they could handle that, they could handle anything.
Yeah, I think that's when I knew I could lean in and do something else. And I had a complete mindset shift, especially at the onset of doing the podcast and interviewing people and learning more and validating the things that I was already doing, or invalidating some of the things that my intuition would tell me. Maybe it prevented future mistakes from being made, but it also solidified everything that we were doing. And this way I could continue on that path that I was on without questioning myself every step along the way.
Okay, so 2020, you were still kind of doing some stuff, but not a whole lot. Firm lost money. 2021, were you completely removed except for sales at that point?
Pretty much, yeah.
So you let go of the reins, made a ton of money just focusing on the sales. So then that brings us to 2022. Are you
Yeah.
completely out of the picture in 2022? You said that was when you gave up sales.
2022, I didn't want to be tied to my calendar at all because I had other opportunities and other things I was doing. So I did not want to continue to be tied to sales calls. And that was because we get so many inbound leads and we do a pretty good job, a really good job of filtering our clients through our type form. Our initial intake form is very extensive and it asks a series of extensive questions. So we started to narrow down the amount of type forms that came in, which also narrowed down the amount of meetings I would have to take, but I still it wasn't enough. I wasn't satisfied with that. I didn't want to take any meetings. So another big swing, I didn't want to hire a salesperson either. So I start training my management team to start doing sales. That's the last thing they wanted to do. They did not want to do sales. They did not like trying to get people to do something, or just they thought it felt slimy. They thought it felt sleazy. They thought some of my sales tactics were sleazy. I'm a pretty decent salesperson. So I'm convinced something. Everybody should be convinced of it, right? And I closed a lot of deals. And when they started doing sales, it was not pretty. They just didn't want to feel pushy. They didn't like it, very, very soft. Basically, they were just taking orders, and the people that were already ready to throw money at us, otherwise, they weren't closing too many deals either. So things really slowed down ever since then. They've gotten better, and we could talk about that too, but they were still learning on how to do this. And they were very strict on who they let in. I would say yes to everything, and I would like when you're getting inbound leads, you're getting everything. So you're getting people that are inquiring about this new acquisition that they have to make, and they want you to review the financials. Oh, we can handle that. Or this that they're going to do, oh, we can handle that. Or they've got this, their controller's leaving, and now they need us to handle this high complex stuff with this manufacturing. Sure, we can handle it. Those are the kind of things that we would take on. Oh, we're working with Microsoft Dynamics? Sure, we'll learn how to use that too. Those are the kind of things I would say yes to because they were willing to pay us $5,000 a month or $20,000 for onboarding. Or things really started slowing down during those years. But it was also time for me to like start to appreciate. They really appreciated not having me around. Remember, I didn't talk about all the new tech that we were adopting, but you mentioned it. Like I had their necks hurting because they were turning left to look at this, and now we're going to use Live Plan, and then this. Now we're going to do forecasting, and we're also going to use this reporting tool. And like everybody was marketing to me, and I'm like saying yes to half of that stuff too. So I'm trying to get us started into a new service line. So 2021 was the year of like Live Plan. 2021, 2022, I wanted us to get into forecasting and business planning, and that was our advisory, was budgeting, cash flow forecasting. I paid for everybody to do the training. I had everybody focus all of their extra free time and how are they going to become advisors and start really coaching like the business clients that we had.
Okay, for our students that don't know, including myself, is Live Plan a forecasting software?
Yeah. Okay. So, and I'm not saying this as an ad for everybody because we're not using it anymore, but we found them through Karbon, and I really loved it. And I still kind of do. We don't use it anymore. We're not doing it with any of our clients, but it was like, this was the gateway to more revenues. You know, we could start charging clients another $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month if we were just meeting with them and we had some focus to their meetings, the forecasting. And nobody could sell this to clients. Nobody actually wanted to do it. I paid for 5 people to go through their boot camp and to learn their method. And the tool itself is a great tool, but the boot camp and the method was the education behind it, a teaching accountant to become an advisor. And I thought you could change accountants and you can get them looking forward. The ones that are used to looking backwards, I thought you could get them to do that. And this was a failure. This was a complete failure. Never stuck with anybody. This is when we eventually started losing our remote employees that we had just hired, the one in Tennessee and the one in Louisiana. They were driven away because for other reasons too, but it was like, so now we're back to like the same people we had here. And I never wanted to admit defeat with that. I never wanted to admit that was the last thing that I did at the firm, but that was the last thing that I did, was try to get everybody to get on there, to get on board with that. That was like my focus until I just hit a wall with that too. And we stopped. And honestly, I don't know if that would have been that much more profitable anyway, because I probably would have had to hire an actual CFO or somebody to do that, and you pay them more, so you get these bigger engagements, and it's just lower margins. And the work that we're doing, as I've said, it's pretty profitable.
That, and I mean, I think that's a tough decision for a lot of firm owners. Because it is all of the talk right now is you need to move into advisory. You need to do the virtual CFO work. You need to do this. Good old fashioned write up payroll, rebranded as CAS, makes a lot of money with fantastic margins being done by people in the Philippines after QBO or Zero has automated 80 to 90% of the work before your Philippines team even touches it.
Yeah.
And to go into the advisory, you're right. You either need to do it yourself or you need to hire a highly comped employee. So if you're going full time, you're going to be paying $150,000 to $200,000 to get someone who has that forward-looking capabilities. And then you got to look at your existing clients. Were your clients really that complicated enough that they needed a fancy projection forecasting software?
Nobody needed that unless they were about to go out of business, which in that case, they were going to go out of business anyway. Like they were running their business to the ground. If they got a forecast that wouldn't tell them how to be different, how to run their business differently. And it's not like my team was equipped to teach people how to. This is going to lead us to the new advisory, the wealth management. It's not the new advisory because this is what the owner was doing before I even got involved in the firm.
So actually, before we go down that road,
just teasing it.
Do we want to wrap up? So we're up to about 2022. You're fully removed. What are you at? About 1.3 million, 1.4 million. Where are you at in 2022?
I was at about 1.5 in 2022.
Okay, so 2022, you're at 1.5 million. You did your last attempt at changes, you directly changing things in the firm with Live Plan. Had a couple of team members leave, and you still, through that, pretty much stayed removed from the practice all of 2022, except for sales.
Yeah, that was it. That was the year that I became OKR, or I became Scotty. That was the year I became Scotty, I think.
Okay. So you still grew from 21 to 22 to around 200 grand, but 20% good, healthy growth, fully remove yourself in 2022. So we're now at the end of 2024. What happened in 2023 and 2024?
Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea.
The firm. In the firm. We're sticking in the firm.
Yeah. No. So in the firm, we lost another person in the U.S. So now I currently have 5 people in the U.S. So 3 CPAs, 2 EAs. That's my management team, the EAs. And 5 people in the Philippines. We have not added anybody in those years. We have not added any revenue because since 2022 we have gone down. We're at 1.3 in 2023. So it's not like we're growing. We're maintaining. Super profitable. 400,000 last year. This year's at 500, but this year's not over yet. I still have other things to do this year. But profitability wise, we're at things have still been pretty solid. I don't see a reason to change anything. I don't have that desire to grow the firm like I did. And that is something that I wish I could teach now, is to teach people how to not want to grow. Like, you couldn't tell me anything differently. I just needed to grow. And a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, you've got to grow or else you're going to die, right? That's what we were always told, is you grow or you're dying. And that's how I felt. And I felt so insecure about my firm because it wasn't growing. Everybody's telling me that you got to grow. You got to keep growing. Why can't things just stay still? And I still don't think I have the answer to that. I can't teach my mindset shift because I don't know if it's right still. I'm okay not growing as long as we can maintain.
So do you feel like rather than growth, is the firm being refined?
Still being refined.
So
Yes,
you're improving the firm.
so we fired our first client this year. Like, we used to fire clients by raising their price significantly until they left.
How
That
many
was
guests have told you to fire clients, and it took you until
Always.
2024 to do it?
And it wasn't even me that did it. It was my team. And so we always did indirectly fire clients. We raised their prices enough till they were like gone. But in this year was the year that one of my guys on my management team had a bad interaction with the client, and it was the last straw, and he drafted an email to fire them. I was proud of him, and I was proud that we finally did that.
Okay. So, I mean, would you say is the management team working on doing more things like that? Where
They are.
identifying who the A, B, C, D clients are, creating a little bit of churn with better inbound leads and offboarding some of the lower quality ones?
They are. There's a lot of growth that's been happening. So when I say it's not growing, it is. Both of my management team, they have kids now too. They're growing as people. They're becoming, they're growing. They're also growing in their roles too. I will say that they are very comfortable because I made them very uncomfortable in the years prior. So they're living very comfortably. I'm not pushing them in any way that they're not pushing themselves already, because I spent so much time pushing them in the past that they're enjoying this comfort and freedom from me. And they always fear me coming back. Like, they're doing their best to tell me that everything's okay. We don't need you. Everything's okay. We don't need you. And there's, when we lose another client or something else happens, I'm like, you sure? Like, and sales were low, but then all of a sudden, like last month, they signed on 4 new clients, all over $1,000 a month. And I'm like, that's the right thing to do. It took them a while. They have their own pace. Some of these sales cycles were like 3 or 4 months, but they closed some deals all at the same time. Things are looking up. I do trust them, and I do trust that they're running this. They care about everything. They're putting on the show now. It's not my show anymore.
So since it's shifted to a little bit of a slower sales cycle now that you've passed that off, but are you seeing a higher client retention with them, the people that are actually doing the work,
I don't think
doing
so.
the screening?
No, I think we're losing as many clients or more than we were before. I think they do have things a little too easy, and I should tighten up the reins a little bit. I think now it's time to let Scott in the door again. And with any business, you need to be able to do that too. So I've given them the comfort and the security and everything. And now I think I need to come back in and introduce some new revenue streams. Maybe we can get into wealth management. I think this is something that was predestined anyway, that we were supposed to be doing. That's why I had you come on too, because I want to talk more about that. That's something that I want to get into. We just haven't started that yet. I think that might be the next step.
Yeah. So where are you at on that, and where do you see your role in it?
So here's my dilemma now. Do I retire as a rapper and now go become a financial advisor? Like, do I go from an accountant to a rapper to a financial advisor? Because I've been loving this rap thing. It's been a ton of fun. At the same time, like, I was born an accountant. This is my story. I think I could get behind doing financial planning and helping people because of the way that you said it. You said it in your episode. This is the new advisory, and this is how you can I have that empathy already, and I do care about people. If I can bring that and bring my whole being, my whole persona to whatever I'm doing, then I could do that with financial planning too, even though maybe seen as something pretty boring. Shane's doing pretty well at it. His firm is doing pretty well, and he seems to like it.
But I think you're looking at 2 different models between because Shane, I believe, is doing what you've done on the CPA side of things. He's not working with clients. I think he might still be doing some sales stuff, but he's not working with clients. So I think
I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't say for certain, but I can say that I'm close to hanging up the mic and retiring the rap persona or that alter ego.
Really?
I'm close to that. I don't know. I'm close to it. It's not as rewarding as it may seem from the outside. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. And honestly, that has been the most rewarding when it lands and when it works. It's amazing. But it still takes a lot out of me too. So
Yeah, I mean I know this is your episode, but from my perspective on the financial plan, I mean, we dove more into why I did it on my episode, but like that work is energizing for me because you can make such a huge impact on individuals' lives. Whereas for me on the CPA side, it's not fully autopilot because I'm not totally removed like you, but it's easy. And I really don't
it
see...
was too easy for me. I think that's why I had to push myself to do something else.
Yeah, and you don't really see as much of it, at least to me, on the CPA side of things. I might be working with a doctor that makes $1 million a year. So if you do something that saves them $100,000 in tax, that doesn't impact the doctor's lives in any way.
Yeah, how much impact are you really having?
It's really not moving the needle. It's just their kids
You
are
can
going
afford
to...
another boat.
Yeah, but like, it's... All right, so the kids are going to inherit $1 million more when they die. Cool. Whereas, like, when you actually deal with the financial planning, you're dealing with the individual and helping them far beyond just saving money.
So I had a few paths I could go on, and I do feel the impact of what I'm doing. It's just you can't feel it as regularly. So doing this podcast and rapping, like the most that I ever feel this impact is like I'm standing out at Engage talking to some people, and then some guy walks up to me and introduces himself to me and says, "I'm a really big fan of your raps and stuff." And then I go to him and I say, "Do you listen to the podcast too?" Then he ends up becoming our number one listener within that same year, and he's interviewing me now. That's the kind
You got
of
a good
impact
memory.
that I'm.
That's as you started telling it, I was like, is this me specifically, or have other people done this?
Other people have done that too, but that's when I feel it. That's when I feel the impact of what I'm doing with this. Otherwise, it's just like it feels one way. You know, talking into a mic or the one-on-one, like I miss that. I miss having that impact and working directly with people. And so I'm considering becoming a coach for firm runners, for CPA firm owners. I feel like I've learned a lot in my journey, but I also have this like imposters, like, what the hell do I know? I know you're interviewing me now and I'm talking as if I know all this stuff, but I learned all that I just told you on this episode by accident. Everything I learned, from my intuition and from my gut, I learn, I do something wrong, and then I do the right thing afterwards. But I had to do the wrong thing first to know that it was wrong. Because if everybody's telling me not to do something, I'm going to do it. And there's a lot of those things that I did that were wrong that I don't do anymore, that didn't work. They were failures. But I still had to do it anyway and learn.
And I think we discussed, actually I was talking with Ashley Francis yesterday on like firm management stuff. Basically said a similar thing. But I think we discount how much we learn in the world we're in talking to other firm owners. Like, you have a huge amount of knowledge from your podcast.
Right. And so we discount how much other people don't know too. So usually on the podcast, everybody comes on, they want to flex everything they know, and they act like they know everything. For the most part, majority of people want to come on flex and act like they have the answers to everything. I'm also surrounded by that a lot too. And I'm like, well, this guy knows a lot more than me. I should be doing what he's doing, or I should be doing what she's doing. Like this, I'm taking notes while I'm doing the show too and trying to implement stuff at my firm. I never saw myself as the person that had the knowledge until it was reflected back to me. Somebody would say something and I'm like, damn, that was good. I'm going to start doing that. And they're like, yeah, I learned it from you on your show. So that's when you start looking at yourself a little bit differently, when somebody else says something to you. Mm-hmm. So and that's why I said what you said to me, that was very impactful for me too, as much as anything I was doing. I mean, I'm just making people laugh with the raps. Like the raps is really just a passion of mine. But to have somebody come up and say that they're impacted by it, or I appreciate you stepping up and introducing yourself. That was dope.
Yeah. I mean, give me a few beers poolside in Vegas. I'll talk to everybody under the sun.
That's
you were
right,
like you were in the celebrity cabana. You were
Is that what that was?
I think so. That was the who's who of accounting influencers in there, I think.
Well, again, for anybody that is considering that or becoming like an influencer or space, you also have to deal with some of the hate too, because accountants, oof, if you're going to put yourself out there and do stuff differently, you're going to get some hate. And I have definitely gotten my fair share, especially with like the rap stuff and other things too. So
Well, I think as you kind of, or are we just fully veering into the post-firm chapter at this point?
if we can close off and have a seal off the chapter, I hope I've given some value and added some value to this conversation. You know, a lot of people don't take me seriously. They're like, "Oh wow, you have a firm too?" Like, because I just go out there and I talk about smoking weed, I talk about rapping, and I talk about doing all the things, you know, the furthest away from an accountant as possible. But deep down, I want everybody to know I am an accountant. I am an EA. I still have my license unless they take it away. So yeah.
I'll close. I mean, you get people may know you for the raps, and I mean that's why I wanted to do this episode with you. You're running a $1.3 million firm with no role in it whatsoever, with $400,000 of cash flow a year. You have built what so many thousands of accountants out there are trying to build. You've created a passive business generating $400,000 a year of cash flow.
Honestly,
that's really
was
friggin'
my
hard.
Goal. I think I've achieved my goal with the firm. I don't need more than that. Like 400 seems like you could do anything with that. You don't need to make $1 million a year. If I wanted to work another 80 hours a week and dump myself into growing again, I could, maybe, but I don't need to. Like that's the other thing about you don't really need any more. Even the stuff that I want, I could get at this point. But I'm comfortable, and I've achieved my goals within this. I have a lot more goals. I still want to be the best rapper alive. You know, I want to be the next Eminem, and that's hard to. You know, I'm 41 years old. I'm not gonna like become a rap star, at least not overnight.
Still got time to become a rap god.
Yeah, I'm just an okay rapper. That was the other thing too about that whole persona is like that. There's a lot of fear associated with that, and I had to become somebody else to really become me too. I had to become Scotty and become OKR to be okay with who I was. Anybody that met me or thinks they know me from the podcast knows the persona that I put on, Scotty or OKR. Like the one you interviewed today, that's Scott. That's me. And I'm okay with me too. Like I've got all those parts of me. They're still me, but I had to become somebody else to be comfortable with who I was. Thank you, students. I hope that you guys got something out of this two-parter, and I hope we can do more of this in the future. I want to make sure that I'm like balancing this whole Scott and Scotty thing too. I want to make sure you guys are getting something out of it, and also that I'm not bored out of my mind. Like I can't just talk about accounting and running firms too. I still got to do some fun stuff.
I mean, I think that still counts as fun.
Yeah, it's all fun. All right, homies. Appreciate you coming on as a sub today, Matt.
Yeah.
Class dismissed.